Canada has set a new daily record of nearly 5,000 COVID-19 cases, and projections show we're on track to double that number by early December. That prompted a warning from the Prime Minister earlier today. He says if caseloads don't start dropping, some impossible choices will have to be made. What exactly does that mean? For more and new money announced for jobs training today, I'm joined by Carla Qualtrough, the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion. She's in Delta, BC. Hi, Minister Qualtrough. Good to have you on the show as always.
Well, thanks for having me.
Before I get to today's announcement, Minister, I did want to touch base with you about what I think is kind of top of mind right now for so many Canadians. Spikes in COVID-19 cases and modeling in this province, in your province very recently, showing that it can get a lot worse by December if sort of actions aren't taken sooner. The Prime Minister earlier today at the press conference highlighted it, and he insisted that the trends have to be reversed now. Is your government convinced that provinces are doing enough to accomplish that?
I think the more straightforward message is we all have to do more. Whether it's at the individual level, at the business level, at the government level, there's no room for error here in terms of the consequences if we don't just all dig in harder.
Is there a conversation taking place in the federal government about what happens if the assessment is made that certain provinces are not going as far as necessary when it comes to public health restrictions? And I ask only because that's sort of the backdrop of the conversation this week. Some comments the Prime Minister made, a call between the Prime Minister and the Premiers. Just wondering if there's sort of an assessment of what happens if.
Well, I think there's multiple conversations happening, whether it's the last night, as the Prime Minister said, his 21st call with the Premiers, Dr. Tam meeting regularly with her colleagues, us discussing at the cabinet table all sorts of possibilities. How do we better support the provinces? How do we better get the message out? What is it in each of our portfolios that we can dig in on? Absolutely, we're planning for a whole bunch of different contingencies, but we're really trying to be very clear that the moment is now for everybody to step up.
Is one of those contingencies or one of the possibilities invoking the Federal Emergencies Act?
Well, listen, the Federal Emergencies Act is definitely a tool we've had in our toolkit. It's a very rigorous process. You have to get a request from a province for us to go in. Absolutely, it's always been on the table. We haven't gone there. It's not that it's just not been necessary yet. There's been enough consensus and collaboration and working together. But it's always at our disposal. Absolutely, and the provinces know this. It's part of the toolkit we have, but we have not made any decision to go there.
I remember months ago asking you a similar question kind of at the outset of the pandemic, and there was a resistance. Both you and the Prime Minister had said, look, this is a very much a last resort thing. We're not even talking about it yet. Can we equivocate the same thing is being said now, or is there an active discussion about the possibility of using it?
No, I would say we're still where we were. So we know we have this at our disposal, but there is no active conversation about using it.
Okay, more specific to your portfolio, part of the point that the Prime Minister made a few days ago when he said, look, please, I'm talking to premiers, I'm talking to mayors, use whatever public health restrictions you need to fight this. Don't worry about the financial effects on businesses because our supports are there. To that point, I just want to ask you about some of those supports because I'm thinking, for example, of Bill C-9, which is in the Senate right now, which addresses some of the shortfalls of those supports around the wage subsidy.
Yeah.
It was rolled back. It will now be, extended and kind of brought back to what it used to be. The commercial rent program, which was predicated on landlords using it, it now no longer will be. It's still not in effect, right? It's still in the Senate. 2 rent days, October 1st and November 1st have gone by, and people have not been able to access that. So when the Prime Minister makes that point, when your government makes that point that the financial supports are there, it's not entirely true.
Well, they're not there yet is probably a fairer way of putting it. They're going to be made retroactive to October 1st. It's in the Senate, as the Prime Minister said. We need senators to appreciate the urgency of this. We all need to work together like we did in the House. But you're absolutely correct that law is not law yet. And it's up to all of us as parliamentarians to work together to make it law and then very quickly implement it so it can retroactively apply to October 1st.
I know it's dependent on what happens in the Senate, but for business owners listening right now needing that help, what do you have any sense of how fast, let's say even once it gets through the Senate, it can be implemented?
I don't have a very clear I wouldn't want to commit to a number of weeks. I know that we are behind the scenes making sure. The nice thing about the way the commercial rent program is going to roll out is going to use the same platform as the wage subsidy. So businesses that are familiar with the wage subsidy will basically have to add on to their wage subsidy experience the commercial rent piece. So it's not going to, for businesses, it's not a whole new, brand new experience. In fact, we're hoping it'll be easier. It might be more detailed, but we're hoping they'll be familiar with the platform.
I asked about a timeline, I guess, only because we're approaching the middle of November. Yeah. As well as I do. Honestly, those businesses are worried.
Possible weeks once the law passes.
Right. Okay. And to that effect, you've also announced today $1.5 billion, right, to address people who are in the kind of hardest hit sectors. And that's going to be sent out to provinces. I'm wondering how fast that money is going to get out.
That money's already rolling out. So this $1.5 billion was part of Bill C-4, which came into effect at the end of September. So as much as we announced it today, we've been working with provinces ever since and getting that money to them. The simplicity of this is that these agreements already exist. We already have an agreed upon formula as to who would get what piece of the pie, if you will. So we've already got those allocations laid out. I've talked to my counterparts. The money is rolling out. I've got letters in of agreement already from, I think, all but one or two of the provinces. So it's rolling out now.
Okay, Minister, just one final question. It's actually about a different aspect of your portfolio, disability and inclusion. I know that we've discussed many times some of the needs for Canadians with disabilities who really did feel like they were hit hard during this pandemic. Your government has put forward a $600 one-time payment. I know that's started to get out the door finally this fall after a long wait for people with disabilities. We've heard from many of them, I've heard even personally from many of them, who are worried about the effects of the second wave and the pronounced sort of length of this pandemic. Is your government considering any second type of payment at any point?
It's a really important question, and thank you. So yes, we've had over 1.6 million Canadians receive that payment now. So it's not rolling out in the sense that people are waiting. People who applied before a certain date have that money. We are looking at all the payments that we made. We need to understand that there's ongoing expenses. A silver lining, if you will, around the disability, the struggle to get this money to people with disabilities is if there is a second payment, and it's not off the table for any of the groups we've talked about, whether it be families or seniors or people with disabilities. We now have the infrastructure in place to pay people with disabilities quickly. So there wouldn't be that protracted months-long waiting period.
Is there an active conversation about the potential need for that? Just given, I think,
absolutely.
Seems longer than we thought it would be.
Is ongoing.
Okay, it is great. Okay, thanks for the information. Thanks very much, Minister. I appreciate your time as always.
My pleasure. Take care. Nice to speak with you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.